I've been kind of going through your bio and looking at some of the past interviews you've done, and I want to kind of tailor this interview to be a little bit different, but still kind of tell your story a little bit because I think it's an incredible story. And so I'll start with the first question we have for you is, a lot of people say that it takes money to make money, and you need a good baseline to start a business. But with you, things were very different with Lovesac when you started, as you started with very little. Can you tell us some background about how that started?
Well, the long story, of course, is on our website in video form and in written form, and I would tell you the whole story, except for it would take like a whole hour. But I guess just let me clarify with you. So what you're asking me is, in terms of money, what it took to get started? Is that kind of more specifically what you're asking?
Well, I know most people are familiar with your story, that it didn't take much for you to just have that determination to start, and you didn't really have a lot of capital to start.
Right.
So my main question to you here is, tell us a little bit about what made you believe you could start a business with very little money in your pocket.
Yeah, actually, it's debatable as to when I started Lovesac, in the sense that I made a sack when I was 10 days out of high school, kind of as an impulsive, funny thing to do, right? I was watching TV and sitting there on the couch, and there was like 10 feet between myself and the TV, and it just popped in my head. I thought, how funny would that be to make a beanbag that big, like as big as this floor in front of me. And so I got off the sofa, went to the fabric store, and bought fabric. And, I remember I bought whatever was on sale, which seemed like beanbag fabric. It was like, vinyl and, fake leather. And there was a black piece and a tan piece, just like a remnant. And it probably cost me, $30. And but even at that time, that was still like real money to me. And I bought it and took it home and sewed it up and spent the next 3 weeks stuffing it. And then the truth is, I didn't make another sack for 3 years. I put the sack away for a couple years. I served as a missionary for my church. I did a bunch of different things. And then 3 years later, when I was 21, I pulled the sack back out. It had been wrapped up and stored underneath in our garage, and took it to the drive-in movies, and everybody wanted one. Everyone kept telling me, oh, that's so cool. Where can I get one of those? And I said, oh my gosh, it took me 3 weeks to make it. I'm never going to make another one. It was horrible. And the truth is, I didn't really even intend for it to become a business. And then eventually my neighbors persuaded me to make them one. So I reluctantly decided to, do it in my spare time. And I decided that if I'm going to make them one, I'm going to sell it to them, of course. And if I'm going to sell it to them, then I need a company. And if I need a company, I need a name for a company. And I was actually working as a cell phone salesman at a kiosk inside of a Home Depot at the time. And just, making, kiosk wages and paid on commission probably. And I just needed a name that was like, beanbag, hippie, 70s, love, peace, hate, war, bag, love sack. Oh, that's cool. I looked up on the internet how to get started, and I drove down to the Utah State Tax Commission, paid $25 to register the name Lovesac on October 31st of 1998. It was Halloween, I remember. And so my total investment at that point was the money for the vinyl. Most of the stuffing for the original sack 3 years before came from cutting up my mom's camping mattresses. And then $25 to register the business. So I had a business for under $100. I had a business that became a business. And after that, most of my money came by selling one sack and making two more, and selling two and making four more. And there came a point where I was stuffing sacks at this old furniture factory that would let us use their old furniture shredder that they didn't use anymore, or their foam shredder. And we would buy their scrap foam from making sofas, and then we would shred it up using their shredder during their business hours. So they kind of let us use this shredder, but it didn't work when we first discovered it. They hadn't used it in like 30 years. So we had to get that shredder fixed. And I didn't have the money. It was going to cost a few $100s. And so I actually took an investment. It was my first investment from my friend's mother, who basically paid for the electric motor to get fixed. And for that, I gave her, some stock in the company, which at the time didn't really exist because we weren't incorporated and we weren't even, properly registered. But when we finally did incorporate, maybe a year later, I made sure that she had some stock in the company. And that was kind of my first investment. And then I also took on another, at the time it felt like a fortune. I took on $1,500 from a friend of mine who, that's all the time I was serving as a missionary. He was in the Coast Guard and making money, and so he had saved some money. And he gave me $1,500 to grow the business and just kind of support it. This is after about a year of doing business, and we were growing and selling sacks to college friends, and we just needed more money to buy more fabric. And we really just bootstrapped. We went sale to sale, event to event, and spent all the money that we were making. We never took any salaries for 3.5 years. No one involved with Lovesac, me and my friends, ever got paid anything. We did it. I was a waiter. all the way through college, and that's how I paid my way through school. And we just kind of used the money that Lovesac was generating to buy more fabric, to keep more in stock, to fix the shredder, to fix the van.
Well,
what have you.
That's incredible, right? But when you said something really interesting to me, you said you don't really know when you really started it, in a sense, because it kept going back and forth between being a business versus just being a beanbag you wanted to make. You also told me that when you discovered you could sell one, it kind of like sparked that it could perhaps be a business. My question would be, when did you, I guess, really know that this was going to be something you'd be doing? Kind of on the bigger side of things, rather than just kind of making side money out of, or really just as a passion?
That's a good. It's funny. I was telling someone this the other day. I was driving through North Carolina. Recently, I attended the big biannual furniture show in High Point, North Carolina. And the first time I went to High Point, North Carolina, I was 23 years old. And I went there to find fabric that for the Limited 2. The Limited 2 had discovered us at a little trade show and ordered 12,000 little sacks, not knowing that it was me and my buddies and like a lawnmower shredding up foam. And what's funny is we took that order and I found the fabric. Eventually, I found the fabric in China and sourced it. Flew back home to build a factory. And then I remember very clearly, I was just finishing up my last semester of school at the same time we were building the new Lovesac factory it was very old actually, but this old decrepit building that we were putting a factory into and putting farm equipment in to shred foam. And I remember, even though we had this $250,000 sale made to the Limited 2 that we still needed to produce and then collect on, I was still interviewing for real jobs. I was still taking interviews. In fact, I flew to South Carolina a company flew me out because I was just graduating from college. So I had all these opportunities. The company flew me out from South Carolina to interview with this massive plastics firm. And I remember leaving the factory that I was kind of building to go take that job interview overnight. Because even though there I was building the Lovesac factory, I had no certainty at all that it was going to work. I had no certainty that even if we did make this order, that there would be more business behind that. And I was exploring all my options.
I mean, I think that's a great point, that with entrepreneurship, there's very little certainty, especially in the earlier stages, right? And I think that uncertainty kind of stays with us throughout the whole time, even later in life. I think it's kind of the way we're built to kind of, at that point, know how to operate. How did you overcome kind of that fear of uncertainty and decide all of a sudden, hey, you know what? We need to make this work. It just doesn't matter what's going to happen. I'm going to take a jump into this.
Well, one thing that I say a lot when I speak and things like that, I have these things that I share.